What was this movie even? To be 100, oh my word. Okay, so guys, so today we're going to be talking about the earthquake bird, and oh my word, talk about just a confusing narrative. So basically the film was about this girl named Lucy, if I'm not mistaken, and she is very introverted, very, not much expression at all. And she ends up meeting this guy, and he's a total photography bug. Like, he just constantly takes photos of absolutely everything. His camera never leaves his side. And she becomes his muse and the subject matter of all of his photos. And so he becomes pretty much obsessed with her. But they start a relationship. The two of them fall in love with one another. And so now they're a couple. About halfway through the film, the girl's friend shows up, and then it becomes a bit of a love triangle. So there's a lot of drama going on there. But around the midway point as well, the main character, she starts to experience just tons and tons of hallucinations, and we as the viewer are never aware of what's reality and what's an hallucination. And so we see lots of things that are purposely deceiving, but then at the same time could be reality, because some really messed up stuff has happened in this movie. And the ending to the film is also incredibly messed up, but I will not go into that because that is definitely spoiler territory. But what I am going to say is that the start of the film does not accurately set up what the conclusion and the climax of the film will be. It sets up a completely different movie to what you're expecting. I'm just going to start off talking about the positives of this film, because it is not by any means of the imagination a terrible movie or even a bad movie. To me, it's lukewarm. It's like soup without bread. It's just there. So the stuff I really liked about the film, I really enjoyed the fact that it takes place in Japan. And that might sound really, really stupid, but this film could have easily taken place in America or in England or any place that's, well explored in terms of Western films. They just chose to shoot this one in Japan, and I really appreciate it. There were times where I felt alienated because, of course, I'm not within the Japanese culture. I haven't been exposed to that to a greater degree. So it's just very nice to see a completely different culture brought to the forefront in a film like this. That was awesome to explore and to be immersed in this completely different world, because Japan is completely different to America, and we see all of these different traditions and the different foods. It just kept everything fresh and unique. And one thing I really enjoyed was the sound design. I think a perfect scene to encapsulate this is there's this one scene where the main character, she's on a mission. She's busy tracking down someone else. She's busy following them, and she's about to confront them. And as the tension is building, as the tension is rising, there's constant cuts back to her apartment where we can see she's left the kettle on, and it's starting to boil over, and you can hear it whistling. And so that sound carries over into this pursuit, into this chase. And so it really puts you as the viewer on edge, because like something's going wrong and you can hear it, but you can't always see it, but you know what's going to happen. And so it just becomes a very, very tense scene, and there's quite a few examples of that. And then they also used quite a few Western songs. I was quite surprised by that. Like, they have lots of karaoke nights and stuff like that, so actually have a lot of Western music. And then they got a lot of traditional Japanese music for the backing soundtrack, which is incredibly nice. It's awesome to hear that. Very, very different in regards to the typical, or rather traditional Western music that we hear in most modern films. And then there were also quite a few shots in terms of cinematography and editing where it gets combined that were quite pleasing, and they were enjoyable to watch. It's nice when you get something as basic, cinematography, when you get that right, and it's so simple, but when you get it done right, it just makes the entire viewing experience just so much more enjoyable. So I think that was another aspect that they did quite well with this film. And now we get on to the stuff I didn't really enjoy, which is quite a bit. Okay, so performances. The two main characters are both introverts, and they give a very good reason as to why the female lead, why she's an introvert. They give a very good reason for that. They don't really go into too much depth for the male lead, but you can kind of assume by the end of the film why he is as messed up as he is. No spoilers there. But I didn't enjoy their chemistry. I felt like they had no chemistry at all, and maybe that was the point. I can understand that could have been potentially a very deliberate choice. But when you're sitting through an hour and a half long movie and the two leads have no chemistry, and you're just sitting there like this, waiting for something to happen, maybe you haven't exactly chosen to deliver their relationship in an entertaining way. And ultimately, even though this relationship might not work in reality, you still want to sit through an hour and a half long movie and be entertained by the end. You'd never want to watch a movie and just sit there being bored. Films have to evoke some sort of emotion, and for majority of this movie, I was just bored. And the two lead actors in particular, in my opinion, were the poorest actors. And it might have also been the script, it might have also been the directing, but there were so many times where it actually just felt like they were reading off of a script. And it didn't engage me, or it didn't get me invested in the story or the characters. Although I must say that the script is bilingual. It jumps between Japanese and English quite often. So I can imagine that is very difficult as a performer to do. And maybe that also had some effect on the performance. But to be 100% honest, they just felt like Kristen Stewart in the vampire films and in the Twilight films. And then another thing that really peeved me off was they introduced so many characters that don't advance the plot in a meaningful way, or kind of just disappear for massive chunks of the story, and don't have any visible character arcs, don't have any visible conclusions to their stories. This one male character, he just disappears. And he was probably my favorite part of the movie. And I'm like, where did he go? He's just gone. So that was incredibly frustrating. So yeah, guys, honestly, this film, some people will enjoy it. Others, like myself, just won't. I really had to force myself, especially through the middle section. I had to force myself through it, especially when they start to get to the hallucinations and stuff like that. Because if you use hallucinations correct in a film, they can be incredibly, incredibly interesting, completely subvert expectations and stuff like that. But when you start to question whether every single scene you're watching is real or not, and it becomes exhausting. I was literally tired after watching this film because I was just trying to figure everything out 24/7. But yeah, guys, that was my review. Honestly, let me know what you thought of this movie. Was it fantastic, or were you like me that kind of was a little bit confused majority of the time and just didn't get invested? But you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for watching this video. I love you. See you in the next one.